And welcome to Libertarian Counterpoint. I am your host, James Just. With me today is Mr. Richard Fields and Mr. John Cameron. Yeah, whichever way you guys are today on the screen. I'm all confused this evening because, as John said, it's past our bedtime, or at least your guys' bedtime, or John's bedtime anyway.
Yeah, I'm usually fighting to stay awake, laying in bed, pretending like I'm reading something at this hour.
Yeah, we're running late or early, depending upon your point of view on that one. But tonight we've got to talk about our government shutdown. We're going to go ahead and start off with that. The government shutdown. Not that we care all that much about it, the government being shut down, but it is, and from some perspectives, at least from the more libertarian perspective, correct? It's more of a distraction, right? I mean, we're $37 trillion in debt. They're not going to deal with it. And so this whole madness, until they actually deal with the fundamental problem, it's just a distraction, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kabuki theater. I mean, the Trump administration is trying to be the heroes of the piece by pushing through Biden's last budget, as if that's a good thing. And of course, the Democrats want Biden's last budget plus a whole bunch more spending. So Democrats more spending, Republicans more spending, Democrats more spending plus. Who cares? Nobody wants to reduce spending, and that's the problem. That's why we have a $37 trillion debt, and that's why the empire is disintegrating before our eyes.
Yeah. I agree. One of the coolest things I read, and I think it was our old friend Reason Magazine said it, or somebody commented on one of the articles, said, so a bunch of non-essential government employees are being furloughed. So if they're non-essential to start with, why do they have jobs? And I thought that was, I paraphrased it, but I thought that was perfect. I mean, I think I worked for one of the largest organizations in the federal government, the U.S. Army, and they could have done the job with half the people and a third of the money, even better. They got cost plus contracts, and people have. There's $1 trillion warplane project that just falls out of the sky, and we don't need the big Navy and the big Air Force, and turns out tanks can be taken out with $200 drones, unless somebody's got a shotgun, because shotguns kill drones. Drones kill tanks, shotgun. Anyway, it's rock, paper, scissors. But, my question would be, and then Richard's point on this is always the $37 billion is the tip of the iceberg. If you put in unfunded public pension liabilities and all the other off the book stuff, it's over $100 trillion, which is, I don't know, what is that? $500,000 for every man, woman, and child in the U.S., something like that. Isn't it?
Yeah, it's insane. It's kind of insane that we're arguing over how much money farther we're going to go into debt. Essentially, they're complaining about the cost of healthcare, the cost of healthcare, and continuing on the emergency extra spending from the COVID area. Right, is kind of the big thing that they're fighting over. But, that always brings me back to, if you love our healthcare system, then thank a union, right? Because we only have the healthcare system we have because unions kind of wanted it imposed on the rest of us. So, I'm finding myself hard to care very much. So I can sit here and I can come up with these cute little sayings. But other than that, I just don't care that the government is shut down again.
Well, I just wish they would shut more of it down. I mean, it's a misnomer from the get, because they're only shutting down what is, the Washington Monuments syndrome. They're shutting down what is public facing and that people actually might possibly miss. The things that are costing an arm and a leg and will never be shut down are continuing as usual. The warfare state.
Well, aren't they shutting down national?
The warfare state.
Aren't they shutting down national parks, which cost nothing to keep open?
Some of them not. It depends.
Yeah. So anyway, no, I agree. I think two out of the three of us collect Social Security. It's bloated. Um, I think it's the only. I mean, even in we consider England a welfare state, and I think the maximum you can get on their version of Social Security is like 400 pounds a week. It's not. I don't even know if it's that much. Less than $2,000 a month. And we have people. I think the max a single individual get who waited until um, in the U.S. waited until full retirement, which is like 72 or whatever for the max, is over $5,000 a month, and it's unaffordable. And then you got Medicare, which is bloated and crazy because the only reason our medicine costs so much is because the government pays for it and nobody pinches pennies. Whereas and then our Greek bonds are paying lower interest than ours are, and even our stated um, the 37 trillion. Greece had a less when it was the poster child for bad fiscal management, had less debt to GDP ratio than we do right now when the IMF bailed them out. So it's, as Richard said, kabuki theater. That was what I was doing earlier when I was being silly. I was doing kabuki. Anyway, and that's all it is. And keep it shut down. If I was emperor of the U.S., I'd just say, okay, we're gonna go easy on you. Every public payout is going to be lowered 10% next year, and then 10% the following year, and we're just going to cut payroll in half tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean there are a few responsible ways of addressing it.
Yeah.
Rand Paul has his penny plan, which essentially cuts the amount of spending by a few cents on the dollar across the board, and would have us out of debt or out of deficit in about 5 years. But he can never get, and even Republicans vote for it.
Yeah.
And then it's very simply the simple reason why is nobody wants to see their Social Security benefits go down. No, none of the healthcare industry want to see their reimbursements go down, and certainly none of the people who are in the education business want to see teacher salaries go down, or professor salaries go down, and those are and nobody wants to see less money being spent on bullets and missiles. Those are the main things right there.
Well, and then boondoggles.
Yeah, we can't even get the easy stuff, right, John?
Yeah. What's that?
We can't even get the easy stuff cut.
Yeah.
So if these freak out when the easy stuff gets cut, so how are you supposed to actually make the tough decisions?
For me, it's pretty easy. We are not, the three of us here don't get to spend more money than we have. We can do it for a while. We can't do it forever. And then eventually, somebody comes and takes our house. They attach our whatever property we have, to pay off the debts that we've incurred. They used to have debtors' prisons. So I think
eventually we have to buckle down, stop spending so much money, take a couple extra jobs, right, to pay off whatever debt we have. That's just how normal people work, right?
I post-divorce, I was, right on the edge of bankruptcy. I didn't go bankrupt. I remember what my lunch was every day. It was a peanut butter sandwich and an apple. And I ran out of deodorant once and decided that I could use talcum powder for a while. I mean, but I paid off.
Thanks for sharing, John.
What?
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. So what and I was around a bunch of other stinky people, so it didn't matter anyway. And, I paid off all the debt and then, started savings and got a job and, put money away. And, I'm going to retire comfortably here pretty quick. And, it can be done. And this country can do it. Other countries have done it. I mean, we just, somebody's got to have some cojones, some chutzpah.
Well, who's got some cojones? Mr. Richard Fields has some cojones this week. So let's see what Richard's got to say from the fields this week.
Well, it doesn't take a honeys to talk behind a microphone from my comfortable abode, but here it goes. This is Richard Fields with this week's report from the fields. The United States Constitution is very clear. Section 8 explicitly says that the Congress shall have the power to declare war. But what's this? In the last 5 weeks, at least 24 people aboard speedboats off the coast of Venezuela have been summarily executed by the U.S. military on the explicit orders of President Trump. 24 people dead at the hands of the U.S. military, with snuff films of the executions gleefully being aired on social media. No declaration of war against Venezuela or any other country or group by Congress, not even a mealy-mouthed authorization of military force, which was relied upon by Trump's predecessors to justify wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, etc., all of which we lost, by the way. Trump's rationale? They were drug smugglers. Never mind that the way to deal with alleged drug smugglers is for the Coast Guard to interdict the boats involved, search for evidence of drugs, and if it is found, to arrest and prosecute the drug smugglers. Due process under the rule of law, etc. Not to mention that we've been waging a war on drugs for over a century, and drugs are still winning. Trump seems to be itching to start a war with Venezuela itself. Now, the Nicolas Maduro regime in Venezuela is a malicious, evil piece of work, socialist, corrupt, and tyrannical, but not so stupid as to take Trump's war bait. So why is Trump pulling this stunt? It's a distraction. Ink and airtime devoted to supposed Venezuelan narco-terrorists is not spilled on covering the Trump administration's attempt to continue what we've been talking about, which is continuing the Biden's administration's obscene spending levels with a continuing resolution, rather than a bona fide balanced budget bill. We're not hearing much news about how tariffs, sales taxes on imports, by another name, are stifling economic growth and paralyzing business investment. We're not hearing about the negative population growth caused by Trump's massive deportations and the correlation between population decline and economic decline. We're not getting updates on Trump's move toward economic socialism or fascism. You pick the name, they're essentially interchangeable, with the U.S. government acquiring equity stakes in Intel, MP Materials, Lithium Americas, Trilogy Metals, and U.S. Steel. We're not getting updates on the deteriorating jobs numbers. More and more college graduates are getting unemployment checks as their sole means of paying off obscene amounts of college debt. We're distracted by Trump's failure to end the war in Ukraine on day one, not to mention unfulfilled promises to end the bloodshed in Gaza. And looking forward, the odds of a stock market bubble bursting will require some massive distraction efforts. And oh yeah, Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I'll be the first to admit there have been a few good policies emanating from the Trump administration, modifying the extremes in environmental and climate regulation, legitimizing cryptocurrencies, and reining in DE mandates. Even Asians and white guys deserve not to be discriminated against by the government. The government shouldn't be discriminating against anyone, but it's hard to maintain respect for a guy who kills boaters for the hell of it, even if the boaters are drug smugglers. I'm Richard Fields, and that's this week's Report from the Fields. See you again next week.
Thank you for your insight. Oh, did I? So we're going to go ahead and move on because we've got a lot to cover, and we've only got like half the show left. Let's see where we at. Barry Weiss has been hired as the CBS News chief of, what is it?
Yeah, chief editor at CBS News. It's an interesting story. Barry Weiss was an opinion editor at the New York Times, who was responsible for bringing on something other than the traditional liberal editorial policy that the Times is known to espouse. She made the mistake, and I would consider this a mistake too, of bringing on an editorial by Tom Cotton, one of the most despicable neocons I can think of. But anyway, the problem wasn't that she brought on Tom Cotton. The problem was that she got a whole lot of flack for bringing anybody into the opinion pages of the Times that the other Times staffers were uncomfortable with, or were triggered by, or the drill. So she said, "To hell with it. I'm going to quit the Times. I'm going to start my own thing. I'm going to call it the Free Press." Imagine that, a free press. So she bootstrapped the Free Press and brought it from her kitchen table to a $150 million valuation. And enough of a valuation and enough of a following so that CBS News, or Paramount, the owner of CBS, decided, hey, we want a piece of this. We'll buy the Free Press, bring it under our umbrella, and we'll make Barry Weiss our chief of the editorial staff. Now, I've got some problems with Barry Weiss's reporting. I think she's a little bit of a neocon herself, particularly when it comes to her support of pretty much all things Israel. But she is one of the few people who will actually give ink and give airtime and give space to not only conservatives, but also libertarians, as well as Democrats. So, she's the real deal when it comes to actual, you remember when news used to be objective? She's the real deal when it comes to that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I subscribe to the Free Press, and I quote or pull articles from it for the show all the time. And I think that I agree that Tom Cotton's despicable in many ways, but that to me proves that an editorial page should have people from if we go back to the origins of the strong free speech movement, back when the ACLU defended the Nazi Party's right to march through a Jewish neighborhood, then even despicable people get their day on the bully pulpit. And she's had a lot of just freakishly good interviews with people. Peter Thiel, her 2.5-hour interview with Peter Thiel, and she's a great writer. And she is interested in the 10 points that she sent out to staff. Said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to tell the truth. We're going to go after uncomfortable stories. We're going to hold the both parties, the parties that get all the airtime, to the same standard. We're not going to cover up. If people are uncomfortable with things, that's good. That means we're going after things that are important. And I think CBS, the owners of CBS said, well, let's go back to when, even though it wasn't true, we had Walter Cronkite was CBS, right? So they had some people that were highly respected on many sides of the aisle. They had good investigative journalists, and they went after everybody, and nobody got a free pass. And so that's what I want to see. And the lefties are just losing their minds over it, because they think, because she's an apostate, she was a liberal, and
she still personally is a liberal.
Well, she is liberal, and
that's fine.
and at the same time, she's a good reporter. So you can't just
that's the main thing.
Yeah, and so that's what we want. And if I'm going to start tuning into CBS News and hold her feet to the fire, because I'm more than happy to comment on articles. And I'm looking forward to it. And anything that really pisses off the and they're not liberals, the commies, that much, I'm in favor of. And as soon as Trump tries to silence her, which it'll be about 2 weeks from now, I'll be even happier. That's the kind of people we need reporting the news. We need the kind of reporting that
pisses everybody off.
We deserve it. We deserve it. We really do.
Yeah. It's how far has the left gone, right? That someone like Barry Weiss is considered alt-right or even remotely right is kind of the strange part. We've lost the center. Where the center really is, I think, is kind of the kind of my perspective on that one a little bit. All right, so we're going to move on to California. California is passing a bill, Senate Bill 771. I believe it's sitting on Governor Newsom's desk at the moment. 771, which wants the state of California to essentially to define hate speech so they can fine social media companies when they don't do anything about it. Can we think of a better thing than politicians defining hate speech?
Well, I think this one's cool because it's in direct violation of the California Constitution. So the California Constitution is really clear about free speech in black and white. So unless they modify the Constitution, which I haven't seen us put that up for a vote, then the law, if it gets passed, is going to get struck down probably in California. It's not even going to get to the federal appeals. I guess it would be a California court. And if the California courts refuse to kick it out, then, I think on a matter of law, they can appeal to the federal court to hold politicians in California to toe the line of their own constitution. I could be wrong about that, but anyway, it's crazy. Hate speech.
It's a violation of the First Amendment, even if it's not ridiculous. A violation of California's Constitution, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. I agree.
Clearly.
Bad law. Stupid.
We've gone through this before,
right?
The
remedy for hate speech or any other kind of distasteful speech is tasteful speech and truth speech. That's the remedy. That's the only remedy.
Yeah, or just don't pay any attention to it. Just don't read it. If you don't like what's in the paper, don't take the paper. If you don't like what's on the news channel, change channels. I mean, you're not
buy a parrot and line the cage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the nanny state. California's desire to be a nanny state, I think, is more at play here yet again. But the hypocrisy of yet again the people who run around screaming about free speech under threat while they're putting free speech under threat, I think is the ludicrous.
Yeah. Well,
the ludicrous thing of that. Yeah. But there's more ludicrousness coming out of the California Assembly there. Our legislature here in California, of their great wisdom, has decided in the effort to protect cashiers, somehow, they're going to ban more items from self-checkout, which it's kind of stupid things like, beer and wine and those kind of things, which of course also somehow includes non-alcoholic beer. I don't understand why that's the case. But why is California sitting here interjecting themselves in our daily routines? That's kind of my question on this.
Very strong labor unions in the grocery store industry. Simple answer.
And the labor unions give a lot of money to the Commie Party here in the state of California. That's simple. I agree with Richard's analysis. It's stupid. And their arguments, the grocers are saying one thing, and then the politicians come back and say the grocers don't have any proof of what they're saying. Yeah, they do, because you want to try to make money in a hard business. This is a grocery business. The margins are just tiny. And so anytime you can make it cheaper to move those items more quickly through, i.e. not pay somebody $65,000 a year to take something or whatever it is off the conveyor belt and push it under a scanner and move it on, that $65,000 a year plus probably $30,000 in benefits, I'm guessing these numbers, let's call it $100,000 a year. With their margins, it takes you $10 million in sales to cover that. So that's a lot. That's a lot. And I understand why the grocery folks want fewer people checking items. Yeah, that's simple.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to move on again. We've got what happens to school lunches in the Make America Healthy Again era. And I'm just going to point out the hypocrisy. These are coming from the same people who were cheering on when Michelle Obama got involved in the school lunches era. Can we get the feds out of local decisions? That's my say on this. Do we have any other comments before this one?
Why are we providing welfare to all school children in the form of free lunches?
That's pretty much
Well,
all of them
yeah.
now. It's like
Right.
70%, something like that. It's a huge
Yeah.
number. Yeah.
Yeah, there's all these massive government programs fail. So why are we expecting it to succeed? I just fail to understand. But why? I get when you have really poor schools, right? In areas that are really poor, I can get it. But why are middle class families relying on school lunches? Why is that even an option? Why would you want it to be an option? We weren't even a middle class family and we didn't do school lunches. It's just, why would we want that to be an option? Those things were gross. Our kids wouldn't eat it.
Peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah,
Apple.
Kids prefer that. They really do. They really, really do. All right, John, here's one for you, John. Back over in England, the NHS misled the public over waiting lists. Right? What's happened is they said that the waiting list time people were spending on waiting list was going down. But they didn't say it was going down because people were dying because they were still waiting for treatment. And they just failed to mention that part. They said, see, look, we're getting through our waiting list. Well, yeah, but
it's not a joke. I mean, this family's complicated. I'm trying to figure out who it is. I think it's like a aunt or niece or nephew fell off a ladder, broke something, called an ambulance. 4.5 hours later, the ambulance arrived. The ambulance people told her, yeah, you should call a taxi. My mother-in-law waited a year for a hip, or a year and a half for, a knee. She waited a year, more than a year, for a heart valve. So, NHS employs a ton of people, and they are, compared to our health people, they don't make any money. And it's kind of a point of national pride that they have this national health thing that they put together, but it's crazy. And, if you depend on it to keep you alive, you look at any travel program that shows people in England, in any major city, and you'll see way more walkers and canes than you do here. Why is that? Because all of those people are waiting for knees and hips that they would get scheduled in the U.S. in 3 weeks. I'm done.
My mother's about to have a hip thing. She was scheduled like 6 weeks ago. So anyway, I'd much prefer expensive than not available, John, right? Is I think my choice. All right, we're out of time. Thanks, guys, for joining you. Thank you for watching. Have a good night, and please remember to love everybody.